gotten to see each other. And there was a very good vibe, so there's something that's going to come out of that, I promise. So today we have Tom Tresser, who is founder of the CivicLab, which is sort of a meeting space, and a collective office space for various progressive groups around town. And he's also under of the TIF project, looking into the funding of Chicago TIFs and where the money is going. We're basically exposing all of the graft and things like that. So without further ado, I'll give you Tom Tresser.
Thanks, Vince. Good evening, everybody. So, my name is Tom Tresser, and I call myself a public defender, but not in the sense of the courts, but in the sense of the word public. So, in my opinion, we're at a time in America and in this city when the very word public, the very concept of public is under attack, under threat. And it's from privatization and other forces that is essentially strip mining, I say strip mining, the public good, public assets of private property. That's what we've got going on in the city of Chicago. Now, my mother was a public school teacher in New York City for 25 years. And my wife was a public school teacher. And I served on the LSC of my elementary school in my community, even though we don't have any kids. Because public education in the Tresser household is sacred. And to me, this idea of public is one of the things that makes America great. Has made us great. Public schools, public parks, public libraries. For a while we had good public housing, public health. Even the internet is created as a public place. So this word public is very important to me, and I think to the success of this city and the country. Well, over the last few years, we've seen our public stuff, as I say, being looted and transferred into the hands of the few. Need I say two words? Parking meter. So people are nodding their heads. Universally loathed, ridiculed across the planet. So you can take comfort from the fact that we serve as an object lesson to community organizers and people who are engaged in civic work all over the world. Because all they have to do is show their audiences an image of our parking meter, and everybody goes, parking meters, fucked up, stupid, bad deal for the people of Chicago. Well, that's the situation that we're facing here. And so I'm interested in anything that transfers public assets, which including property taxes, into the hands of the few. So that's the background. I wanted you to understand where I'm coming from. Tax increment financing is one such program. It was set up in California in the 70s and came to Chicago in 1986. And the idea is to bring development into parts of your city or community where the market has fled. So you hear the word blight. Blight. Now we could pause here and have the rest of the evening discussing who blighted who. Because you have to understand, again, in the city of Chicago, we have a long history of exclusionary loans, race baiting, blockbusting, redlining, predatory lending, up to this very day. Communities of color are most particularly hit by these practices, have been, and continue to be hit. But nevertheless, this word blight is what drives TIFs. So it goes like this. Say I'm a developer and I want to build, I don't know, Connie's Pizza. And I don't have enough money to do it because I want to put this Connie's Pizza in a part of the city that's blighted. And the bank will say to me, Tom, your business plan is good except for one thing. Where you're going to put it is going to fail because that area is blighted. It has people in it who are blighted. Translate, people of color, people of modest means. What does that mean? They're going to steal from you. They're not going to have enough money to participate in your project. They will not be able to rent from you if you're going to have a little strip mall. So therefore, we can only make this money available to you at a very high interest rate. And I say, I can't make it. I can't make it. Is there anyone who can help me? I get some help around here to do my little project, my Connie's Pizza Mall. And the city says, yes, Tom, there is. There is this thing called Tax Increment Financing. And we will give you up to 25% of your project if you are building it in this so-called blighted area. And that money is only for construction. So it cannot be used for hiring teachers. It cannot be used for hiring policemen. It cannot be used for hiring after-school counselors, coaches for the park district, books for your library. Only for building stuff. And it can be a direct gift to me, the developer, or it can be a conveyance of land, or the city can help me, say if there was a brownfield here, they can clean it up. But it all comes out of my bottom line. All that's money I don't have to spend. Now this money is a one-way trip, and once it's gifted to me, it's not a loan, and it's not contingent upon anything. So if my project is hugely successful, and Connie's Pizza looks like it's doing pretty good, and I sell this property to, say, Sam Zell, as he buys my pizza chain, the profit doesn't come to the city. On the other hand, if this goes bust and nobody comes to Connie's Pizza and it's a failure, and I go bankrupt, the city doesn't take this over. We don't get this property to then dispose of it as we would. So basically, we are silent equity partners with no equity. That's what happens when you put money in TIFs. Now, what happens is, when they draw a TIF district, and we were actually in one, we were in the Pilsen TIF. So here we are right here on Archer. This all green here, which extends a little off the map, is the Pilsen TIF. It was created in, I think, 1994. No, 1998, and will last till 2022. So it's 23 years. So what happens is, they draw the TIF district, and they take a snapshot of the TIF. How many properties are inside the TIF? So say there are 1,000 properties. And say these 1,000 properties are throwing off, say, $1,000, just for sake of argument, the property tax. So that's the snapshot, and that we call the base. So before we go any further, we need a slight diversion into property tax law. So in Chicago, you pay your property taxes. What units of government are funded from your property taxes? So imagine you're looking at your property tax bill, and you'll see government agencies on there. So what are they? Shout them out. Yeah, Board of Education.
Police and fire.
Well, that would be, yes, that would be under the name of the City of Chicago. Same thing, City of Chicago. Parks, yeah. Other groups, these are the groups that you pay for with your property tax dollar.
Police?
Police is under the city.
Oh, okay.
All under the city. You have the County of Cook, right? You have the libraries. the city colleges, and the water reclamation district. Right? So these are the things that you're paying for. You should know. And if you're renting, you're still paying. Right? So your money just goes to your landlord, and he or she pays the bills. And that's how it works, right? You can't not do this. That's the deal. When you live in a great city, we have bills to pay. And unfortunately, in Illinois, we rely very heavily on property taxes to fund our local government, especially this one. In Illinois, we rely very heavily on property taxes for our public schools. That's something you need to remember. Now, all this goes to the property tax dollar. Which is the biggest taker? Which one of these takes the most of your property tax dollar?
It's education.
Education, do you know how much?
75%.
Now let's say it's 56 cents a pound.
So where I come from is 75%.
Well, more power to your schools. In Chicago, it's 56 cents. And the parks are like, 9 cents, and the county is, 7s. Library is something. The city is 20 cents. Anyway, it all adds up to $1. You see? Now, the reason why I spend a little time dwelling in property tax land is because anything that takes $1 of property tax off the table is something we need to pay attention to, right? $1 goes missing, these guys get starved, don't they? The dollar doesn't make it here, goes somewhere else. Think of it like Vegas, where the mob was skimming, You heard about those stories? The mob would skim. The casino would take in maybe $1 million in a day, but only 900,000 would make it back to Chicago. The owners would say, "Hey, we had a great night, $900,000 in revenue." They didn't know that there was 100,000 in the closet, they never saw. Well, Mr. TIF is like that. Mr. TIF takes his off the top. He takes his off the top, and then what's left is distributed to these units of government. All right, now, so we've established that this base, in our little example, is $1,000. Now we see the famous you may see this example all the time. The base, and we said it was $1,000. Right, so that's $1,000 going to Board of Ed, parks, libraries, etc. This is the first year of the TIF. This is the 23rd year of the TIF. This thing lasts a generation. So what happens back in our little example? Before the TIF existed, there was no counties. Now, there's economies. Next year, somebody builds across the street, and across the street, and across the street. Meanwhile, hopefully, the economy is doing well, and our property values are rising. So, in the third year, this is year 1, in year 3, we could have 1,010 properties, new building. And instead of $1,000, our property taxes could be collecting $1,500. All right, hopefully things are going well. This property wasn't here before, it's now being taxed. The guy built across the street, property values are going up. So now all these properties, instead of spitting off $1,000 in property taxes, are now spitting off $1,500. All right, now let's take a look at our famous graph here. We show this by this is where the increment comes in. So we're saying in year 3, it was here's $1,000 here, and down here it's $1,500. $1,000 in year 1, $1,500 in year 3, right? All this, that's the increment. The famous increment. $500 goes to the TIF. $1,000 still goes to those units of government that we explained. That doesn't change. And it's flat for 23 years. There is no cost of living. There is no inflation adjustment. This is flat. So this is $1,000 to our units of government that we are making up. It's the same here, $1,000. Where does all this go? All this goes. He gets that. This is what we would say is on the books. This is what's part of our normal budgeting process. When the city councilmen, such as they are, supposedly debate our budgets, this is part of what they're debating. So we would say this is on the books for the discussion of our budgets and which way the city is going for 2016, how much money do we have to work with. The mayor, of course, is the executive, so he puts forth his plan for how he wants the city to go. That budget is ratified by the city council by December 31st. And that's your operating plan. That's what we're all about for the next year. Who wins, who loses, schools open, schools close, bus lines form, not form, projects fail or begin, all that is unfolded in your budget. But all this here is off the books. It's not available to the city council to debate or for you to put your teeth around and your arms around to understand what priorities are guiding this money. Now, how much are we talking about here? I'm just giving you this one example, of this mythical TIF. But in some parts of the city, this TIF here, in year 15, this right here could be 90% of all the taxes collected in the TIF district. So right now there's 21 TIFs. That's true. 21 TIFs inside all the TIFs that are taking so much money that they're flush, they're fat and sassy. So, what are the big numbers? 151 TIFs. I gotta say, no other city in America has anything like this. I mean, there are TIFs in 47 states. So this is not unique to Illinois. And in Illinois, there are 1,220 TIF districts. But no city with the stature and heft of a Chicago has anything like what I'm going to tell you now. So it's about 32% of the entire city is in a TIF district. In 2013, this number was $422 million. So the sound of the vacuum cleaner you're hearing, that giant sucking noise, that's the sound of $500 million of your property taxes being sucked up by the TIFs and being sent to City Hall. To be used for the mayor, by the mayor and his insider allies for projects that we're not sure about, but I'm going to give you a little taste. So it's about $1 billion every 2 years. Yeah. All right. Since TIF started in 1986, it's greater than $6 billion. $6 billion in property taxes have gone flying into the TIF's vacuum cleaner. We have maybe a good idea of where half of that money went. We might be able to put a handle on about $3 billion of that. The other three, we have no idea. And of that $3 billion, about 60% of it went to private projects, some of which I'm going to explain in a minute. Okay. Now, it's all over Cook County. So for any of you people that are from the suburbs or have friends and family who live inside of Cook County, this is just the city now. Cook County has a total of 435 TIFs. They took a total of 683 million, of which 422 is the largest part. So this is all over the county of Cook, 90 municipalities, of which Chicago, of course, is the biggest. But they're in Evanston, they're in Cicero, they're in Bolingbrook, they're everywhere. And in every city, they play out in more or less the same way, run by the mayor for projects that are below the radar and beyond public scrutiny. Now, so this goes on for 23 years, and at the end of the 23 years, the TIF sunsets, or it can be actually extended for another 12, and that has happened. But what happens at the end of the 23 years, then all the money goes to the units of government. So the TIF, it's like the TIF never existed, and whatever is collected by the property tax from the TIF inside those properties, it just now goes to the units of government, as they should have all along. So that's at the end of 23 years. Now, so that's the big picture. They're all over America, 47 states. There is no one place to find out how big or bad this is. I estimate that it could be as much as $20 billion in property taxes across this country every year. But nobody really knows. Now, that's only one side of the ledger. This is money out. What about getting paid? Because that's what the whole point is, right? The whole idea was we made our connies, we made our project. So who gets paid? Well, I'm going to tell you who got paid from this TIF right here, the Pilsen TIF. Because that's what we're in. So we had the Chinese American Development Corporation, $7.3 million. The J Garden Apartments, $500,000. The Steiner American Linen Corporation, $3.6 million. The University of Illinois Chicago, $107 million. Now that's particularly troublesome, seeing how as we closed 50 public schools. And part of the rationale for closing our schools and shutting down mental health clinics and cutting back our essential services is we have no money. The University of Illinois Chicago is a fine institution. I teach for them. But the last time I checked, it's not a free institution.
We keep raising our tuition.
Tuition's going up. And so it's a fine institution. It's not free. Why did it receive almost $108 million? Well, it's to build the University Village, which you drive through to get here. I mean, there's miles of condos and other kinds of developments. Well, you get to the conundrum here of the TIF program. Who plans what for who? And who uses our public dollars for what purpose? Is it okay to use public dollars for these deals? Steiner American Linen, the Ryan Center, a shopping mall where they put the Target, right on Damon, $3.8 million. Now, one project I want to call to your attention, and then we can take questions. is the produce market. Right here, on Walcott. Looks like this. So, you know, it's somewhere over here. I don't have the exact address, but it received $9 million. This produce market is it's a distribution center. Now you can say, well, that seems like a good idea to have a facility like that. You know, this area is kind of a marketplace, industrial kind of a distribution center. So, you know, you could have an open mind about giving $9 million of your property taxes to the developers. Well, the developer Centerpoint Properties Trust gave $14,000 to the 25th regular Democratic organization, $2,500 to the HDO, the Hispanic Democratic Organization, and $2,500 to Danny Solis. The builders, FCL Builders, gave $13,500 to the 25th Ward regular Democratic Organization, $2,500 to the HDO. The operator, Golden County Oriental Foods, gave $35,000 to the 25th regular Dems, and $3,500 to all the Solis. The architects, everybody is in this. Everybody is playing. Cornerstone Architects gave $1,000 to the 25th Ward Democrats and $1,000 to HDO. All told, people involved in this project right here, which got $9 million of public money, gave $64,100 to the local Democratic politicians. Coincidence? I don't think so. So, that is one part of the story. The other part of the story that the TIF Illumination project cooked up, and remember, we're all volunteers. Everything that we're doing here, everything I'm showing you, everything that has been made here has been made by volunteers. This is the Pilsen TIF, showing the projects funded. And it also shows, on this map, schools that were closed and cut, 2013. So we have 1, 2, 3 schools that were closed within 2 miles of where we're standing. 3 schools closed, and 4 schools that were closed and 4 schools that were cut. Now, the Youngman School, let's see what they lost. Youngman School, which is not too far away, lost $500,000, 4 positions, and one teacher's aide. So that's 4 teachers lost from the school, plus 1 teacher's aide from a school, a 5-minute walk from where this money is being distributed. So with one hand, we shower money on these guys. These guys are paying off the local politicians. $62,000 for $9 million, that's a pretty good rate of return, wouldn't you say? Call me cynical. But 10-minute walk from this location, the Youngman School got cut $500,000. I guess the Youngman School kids didn't know how to pay off their alderman with their lunch money or something. Maybe they would have got this $9 million. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the story of TIFs in Chicago. It's gone amok. As I say, it's $6 million gone missing since 1986. The TIF Illumination Project is attempting to do these meetings like we're doing tonight, to give you the basics. And when we do a ward-specific meeting, of which we've done 34, we go deep into the details of that particular ward. So we weren't doing a ward meeting tonight. This is kind of like TIF 101. But I happen to note that we're by the Pilsen thing, so I illuminated the Pilsen TIF for you. But this could be done anywhere in the city. Anywhere there's a TIF, we have these kinds of projects. The schools that are closed, projects that make no sense. I say, who is Steiner Linen? Why do they have 4 million? People scratch their heads like, we're not sure who they are. I think they're down the street, or they closed, are they still around? There's always these questions. Why did these folk get money? And could we have used that money for other purposes had they only asked? But they never do. All right? All right, ladies and gentlemen, consider yourselves mildly illuminated. But we'll take some questions. And is that okay? All right, let's take some questions. Yeah.
I've never heard of. It's the first time I hear about. I hear about TIFs. I have a stupid question again. What is the incentive again for having TIFs established? I missed that part in the beginning.
Well, the argument is, the question is why have a TIF in the first place? It's in order to create development where supposedly the market is not present, or I as a capitalist couldn't just get a loan. Like why did these guys need $9 million in public money to build this project? They said it's because we can't make it work. We need public money to fill in the gap.
So
But
the
there's no
incentive
way
is-
of knowing whether that's true. So there's two tests. There's this idea of blight, and then there's what they call the but-for test. But for my butt, I don't know. but for the presence of this public money, I can't make the deal happen. So what they're saying is, there's no way you could have built this project on that location. The market would not have supported it, so we needed public. And I just don't believe it.
So the taxes are then lower than the typical taxes. It starts with
No.
lower than average taxes.
No. The taxes are the same. Whatever your property is assessed for, you don't get a break. What I'm saying is, something is coming in between the recipient of your property taxes. The way the people that should be normally receiving your property taxes, there's now someone intercepting a certain amount of money, and that amount of money is every penny above the base. So if this building right here is worth is paying $1,000 in property taxes, if that's what it's worth, that's what it's paying. And in next year, if it's paying $1,100 because the property values have gone up, that 100, again, every penny in increment is collected by the TIF. So Mr. Connie is not getting a break. In fact, he's being lied to. All the people that have properties in TIFs have been lied to, because when they see their property tax bill, up until recently, all they've seen is the names of these bodies. The TIF wasn't on there. Now, because of Cook County Clerk David Orr, now the TIF is included, and you can see. So, thank you to David Orr. He's righteous. Yeah. Yeah, well, the question is, can you show money in and out? You know, no, they don't do that. As I say, this is money off the books. So you'd have to look in multiple places to try to get the big pictures, what the TIF Illumination volunteers do. So the Board of Ed will publish its budget, and it makes no reference to any of this. They'll report they have a deficit. They'll report whatever they report, and then it turns out that they lied. They didn't have a deficit.
Can they use money from one neighborhood into another TIF neighborhood?
So the question is, can they transport money? Yes, they can, as long as the TIFs touch. It's called porting. As long as the TIFs touch. And as I mentioned, in 2013, we saw that there's 422 million total that was extracted by the TIFs. Of that, 144 million was moved across the borders. Now that to me is skimming the skim. So they took the 422 mil and put it over to this big table over here, and then in between carrying it between the tables, they took 144 of that and ran it off to somewhere else. We tried to track, come on in. We tried to track where that money went, and we were successful in maybe a third of the instances where money left a TIF, and we could find out where it went. Now they keep that a secret because there are projects going on that we don't like. Not too far from here, they're building the DePaul Arena in the Second Ward, and originally they were going to give that arena $55 million in TIF funds. But the people made a stink from that. Even the students at DePaul were embarrassed. They said St. Vincent is rolling over in his grave. He's a great organizer. He was the guy that helped the poor. He was like our first community organizer back in like the 1500s. Well, they said, shame on you, DePaul, for taking $55 million out of the mouths, as it were, of our school children. So the mayor did a little shell game and put that $55 million into the building of the Marriott's Hotel. And that's much better. Marriott's being another billionaire family. Yeah.
Where does that stop then? There's a TIF C.
Yeah.
Can't you just move
could.
the money along?
You could. Yeah. So that's why we lose track of 2/3 of the transfers. We can't find them all. In a third of the cases, they matched up right away. They were touching, and we could put them together and see. But for sure, the TIF that's operating down on Cermak, where the arena is acting like a black hole and is attracting TIF money from the nearby TIFs. And you can see they're coming in 14 million here, 8 million here, and they're cobbling together the 55 million that they promised the developers. Coming from, so it's even crazier because if you're living miles and miles and miles away and you're not even aware of this controversy, you could be paying. Your property taxes could be being moved miles away to help the Marriotts, those wonderful philanthropists. Yeah.
How were you able to track the ones that you did find?
Well, because what we do at the end, so in July of every year, the city releases its annual reports for the most recent year. So in early July, we'll get the numbers for 2014. So again, every TIF has a little report. It's a PDF. So for those of you data junkies, you know that PDFs can't manipulate them. Some software can, but I mean it's very kludgy, and so we actually do it old school. We open them up one by one. So I invite anybody here to want to play with us in a couple of months. Sign in the sign-in sheet, and we'll make a note to reach you. And what happens is we open up a Google spreadsheet, and each volunteer takes 5 or 6 of these annual reports, which look a little like this. We go to the balance sheet page, which looks like this, and everybody takes the numbers that they're instructed to, and they put them into the master spreadsheet, and that's how we know. So it's just a simple dumb spreadsheet. At the end of the operation, we'll all 100, I think there'll be 156 now. I think they took some out, added some, whatever the number is. Some TIFs will be present, but they won't have any money in them. So if a TIF got started last year, there may not be any money in it, so there's nothing to do. Whatever we got, we put them into the spreadsheet. At the end of that period, we just add them up, and we find out a couple of things. The last number down here is the balance. So at the end of 2013, this TIF right here had 44.5 million in the balance. That's how much money one TIF had. Now I said there's 151 of them, and the spreadsheet, as I say, just adds up the balances. You know, it's like everybody has a checkbook for your family in your business. At the end of the day, you have money in, money out. So is everyone sitting down? Yeah, everyone's sitting down. In 2014, January 1st,
Baby tone.
This is how much money was sitting in all of our TIF accounts. No, just Chicago. Chicago. City TIFs. Chicago TIFs. $1.71 billion. Let me repeat that. January 1st, 2014, the TIFs, the bank accounts had almost $2 billion in property taxes sitting in them. Not magic beans, but the most basic fundamental unit of local government, your property taxes. Didn't we fight a revolution to get this country going because people were messing with our taxes?
Yes.
Is it time for a revolution?
Yeah.
Well, where the hell were everybody 2 weeks ago? Damn it!
Yeah.
Only 40% of Chicago voted. 60% of the registered people who could have voted stayed home. Shame on them. Shame on them. We're going to live with this mess for another 4 years now. Anyway, the question is, to me, I asked one big question, I'll ask you a second question. The first big question is, who plans what for who? And do you feel you're part of that process? No. The second question is, are we broke? Oh. I'd say it would be hard to persuade me that we are broke when there's $2 billion of our money. It's not like federal grants, strange Martian gems. Property tax dollars sitting somewhere. Why can't we get that money right now? That's the question I wanted the candidates to answer. I wanted Chuy Garcia to hammer Mayor Emanuel on that. I wanted any challenger to alderman candidates to hammer the incumbents. Come clean on this money. Remember that movie, Show Me the Money? Remember that guy? So we should have been running around all City Hall, show me the money, show me the money. They can't. They can't. Because it's the pot. It's the pot of spackle that they throw on projects for power and as they call it, the slush fund, and to be used when the mayor sees fit. Yeah.
So before you wrap up, tell us about the CivicLab. How many times have you done this presentation? Tell us about the CivicLab.
Yeah, this is the 36th presentation that we've been called to do around the city. And I've been organizing, doing grassroots democracy for 40 years. My first voter registration drive was in 1970. Before some of y'all were born. You know, and as an organizer, as someone who's fighting for grassroots democracy, you're thrilled if you can get like 10 people to a meeting, you know? Like, I'm so mad at this thing, you know, they're doing this thing in my community, come to my meeting, brother, you know, and you'll get mad with me, you know, and then 10 people show up. And I say to my wife, you know, we killed it, we had 10 people. This is not that, man. This is the 36th organization that is asking for this work. So now you are now part of a smarter than the average bear citizens. Now it's out to 4,300 people. Again, completely volunteer driven. I don't get a dime. We don't have any money. It's like if we couldn't even put an ad in the, you know, the penny saver, you know, to say come to the Connie's Pizza tonight. If we had any money, imagine we would put a half-page ad in the Reader. Come to Connie's Pizza. This place would be completely. Who doesn't want to know where their money's at? Who doesn't want to know this? Anyway, so that's the first question. This is the 36th meeting. The Civic Lab is America's only co-working space dedicated to civic engagement and social justice. So if you want to come and work with us, it's $200 for a month, but honestly right now we got to pay what you can plan, which includes everything from $0 to $200 a month per desk. You can meet there. You can have a class there, you can celebrate, hang with us, and it's coming on 2 years. And we're in the West Loop. I have cards here if you want. Yeah.
I don't have a question. I just want to comment on one of your YouTube videos where you were showing, is this a blighted area?
Yes.
And this is where the money's gone. I thought that was very effective, and more of that
Yes.
would be great, and we can make it viral. Right, Wolfpack?
The question was, or the observation was, we have a TIF 101 video. So if you go to our TIF Reports website, you'll see the link to our videos. John Sheehan standing right over there. Brother John, say hello to John.
Hey, John.
Is a grassroots videographer. He runs around the city documenting protests, civic engagement events, rallies, etc. I believe you get something like 6 million hits.
6.5 going on. Yeah.
6.5 million hits on YouTube from his work. John is part of the team that is creating 5 videos for us. So you're referring to the first one, TIF 101. It's strangely entertaining. 22 minutes of TIFdom with Professor Rachel Weber
Right.
and Cook County Clerk David Orr. So they unfold their wisdom to you. We're now in production for our second video called the TIF Hall of Shame. So walk with us.
Definitely. That's going to be great.
Down the TIF Hall of Shame. It's very scary. It's not for children. So be advised. You'll have those advisories, you know. Nudity, violence, sex, blatant rip-offs.
I'm there.
You are... He's Mr. saying, show me, what time does it start? We're going to have one of those advisory warnings, you know. It's like, faint of heart, really. Take a pill before you watch this video. The third video will be TIFs in schools, where we're going to break down the helping and the hurting part. We're going to be talking to experts in public education and policy. The fourth one is TIF organizers. You'll meet some of the people like Vince and his colleagues who have invited us all over the city. You'll meet some of those people. What are they doing and why? What has happened after these meetings, if anything? The last video will be called Alternatives to TIFs. So there are people in the city now that are doing fantastic work in what I would call grassroots economic development. You know, where it's not the mayor's buddies. It's not the Pritzkers and the Hyatts and the Marriotts reaping the rewards, but it's folks in the community doing these very creative programs for what I would call economic justice and prosperity for all. But they just have no money or no power. But they've got great ideas. So we'll put a spotlight on them in the fifth one. Yeah.
Going back to the beginning of your presentation, at TIF money, where is road construction? Filling potholes. Is that part of it?
Yes, TIF money is used for street construction, and in the case of the Pilsen TIF, that happened to the tune of $33 million. So that reminds me, I forgot to tell you one thing about the Pilsen TIF. This was created in 1998. It goes till 2022. I told you that there was 4.5 million in the balance sheet right now. But since this bad boy was created, it has collected a total of $111.5 billion. So since 1998, this Pilsen TIF has collected $112 million. Where did it all go? We don't know. We know something. So to your question, yes, that is how they're doing some basic infrastructure. But here's the problem. I said we have one big question is who plans what for who. Second question is are we broke? The third question is related, and that is what vision do we have to drive Chicago forward? We don't have one. So since we don't have a grand plan, we have these rifle shot catch-as-catch-can projects that just pop up. So if your community doesn't have TIF and you have potholes, you're not going to get those potholes filled before a community that's wealthy and does have TIF, because the money is supposed to stay put. So since these monies are sort of handcuffed in a locational basis, the poorer parts of the city suffer the most. So it is surprising to learn that in Chicago the poor get poorer and the rich get richer. Oh my God, you're kidding me. So there are TIFs down on LaSalle Street. There's a TIF in the Central Business District that collected $800 million. So that's $800 million that didn't make it out into the communities because it was kept locally and could only be used for high rises and luxury buildings. So is it any wonder that people feel that there's a little Ferguson going on here? There's some structural inequities built into the city, and the TIF's are part of that.
Is there anything going on in the city council legislation that is trying to control this or do away with
Good question. The question is the city council doing anything? No. No. And now with the new independents, it's possible you might see a surge. But here's what happened a year and a half ago. Bob Fioretti put an ordinance in, and he had 31 co-sponsors, and it was to audit the TIFs, and for any project that was done, like Connie Speaks is done, built, paid off, and instead of the TIFs going on for 23 years, they would just cut it off. And all the money left over, they would flush it back into the units of government that needed them. That was the ordinance. There were 32 sponsors of this ordinance. It was referred to the Rules Committee, where it languished until November of 2013, when Alderman Wagispat moved a parliamentary move called Rule 44 to dislodge it. Now the vote was not on the merit of the bill, just to get it out of the Rules Committee, right, to the floor of the City Council, where it can be debated yay and nay. This is how sensitive this is. It never reached the floor of City Council. 22 of the co-sponsors abandoned the bill. So it only got 11 votes to dislodge the bill from the Rules Committee, and it failed, and there it lies to this day. So the 22 aldermen who signed the bill originally, when they thought it was not going to go anywhere, all of a sudden got the telegram from the 5th floor and said, shut this thing down. Yeah. It hasn't changed. It remains with the mayor and Ed Burke. Now, it may be that if there's 2 to 3 or 4 more progressive aldermen, so now we're talking about a block of 11-ish, 12-ish, depending, maybe if they stay together, they would be enough of an impediment to get something from the mayor. But even if they stood together solidly to a man, they're still outvoted, 38 to 12, if it comes down to it. And the history of Chicago is such that it's not looking very good. Yeah. So there you go.
Anything else? You guys ready to eat?
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So please sign the mailing list if you want to get information on the Civic Lab. Get the clipboard going, please. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Hey, I want to let you guys know, I have a radical financing plan. This is our second special guest that we've had for TYT Chicago. The first one didn't eat this, but he will. So there's enough of us here that if we all pitch in $2, we can buy this guy pizza. Can we do that?
Yeah!
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, but I gotta go. I gotta get back to my wife. So any contribution will go to the Civic Lab. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you.
See?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mailing list somewhere. Where's the clipboard?